Donald Trump is currently the favorite to win the 2024 presidential race. Make sure to hit the like button and subscribe for more content just like this. And so looking at these, things that we have, right? So we have our moving aggregate, which I have basically plugged in all of the top tier polling data that we have. I've basically graded all pollsters by the amount of polls and sample size they have in the current average, their margin of error from 2020, as well as how many undecideds they have. So the more undecideds they have, the less of a score they get, because I'm trying to weigh out undecideds as humanly possible, because this is essentially getting all of the polling data, weighing all of the polls to a target electorate. So we're basically weighing all of the polls to a tied electorate, and we're trying to actually predict the popular vote. We're actually trying to make some sort of accurate aggregate. And right now we have Trump up by 2.37% in the national popular vote. And Robert Barnes and Rich Barris actually just did a video covering the Electoral College, and they actually have numbers that are very similar to my moving averages in some of these states. Some of the numbers are almost very, very, very similar, in my opinion. I mean, they had Trump up in the Electoral College 319 to 219. And right now, in my moving averages, he's up in all the major swing states except Minnesota, Virginia, New Mexico, and Maine at large, which is only one state off from what they have. And we have a big lack of polling data. And you may say, well, all those states are becoming so liberal. How is that even possible? But if you look at elections, right, and you see how things break, usually what happens is a huge demographic shift tends to occur that catches people off guard quite a bit. You see in 2004, right? Bush won Colorado by 4.7, won Virginia by 8.2, only won Tennessee by 14, only won he won Louisiana by 14.5, won Arkansas by only 10, Missouri by 7. And what basically happened is, yes, McCain did better in the Appalachian areas of the country, but massively underperformed with white working class voters really badly, to the point where Michigan ended up going from Kerry +3 all the way to Obama's +16.5, and a lot of rural areas just really went home for Obama that cycle. I mean, they really did. Romney was able to kind of improve on the margins, kind of even won states like Texas by a safe margin. But if you look at 2016, the whole map rewrites itself, because Trump does better with white working class voters. He had a lot of disaffected Democrats kind of come his way, and you had a lot of third parties kind of splitting the vote in some of these states like Colorado, New Mexico, Nevada. And then in 2020, yes, Trump underperformed with white suburban voters and, did worse with college-educated voters and young voters by quite a bit. But he did improve with Hispanic and African Americans, which is why he was still able to hold on to Florida, North Carolina, Texas, and Iowa and Ohio. I mean, he kind of underperformed in these states very slightly, but he was still able to hold on to them. But now what you're seeing is a very younger part of the population that is working class, especially in the food service industry. These voters are going to zoom to the right. And all of these voters live in very urban areas across the country, like Clark County. You have Maricopa, Atlanta, Miami-Dade, some parts of North Carolina, Philadelphia, and Pennsylvania, Detroit, Michigan, and even to an extent Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and even in New Hampshire and Maine at large. I mean, you see the margins are very Democrat here, but these margins were really boosted by these huge young vote margins. Like, you're talking about Biden winning with young voters by 45 points and only winning New Hampshire by 7, and all the polling data is always ridiculously off in some of these states because they fail to target certain voters in these states. And even though, yes, Biden won by 7, the difference between 7 and a tied popular vote in New Hampshire really isn't that many votes, because the state is relatively smaller. And so if you look at their separation in votes, I mean, Trump only lost the state by about 70,000 votes, which is really not that many votes I mean, yes, for New Hampshire, it's large. I mean, it's a large victory, but in terms of the actual raw vote shares, that is not a really big win for a Democrat candidate or any candidate in general. 70,000 votes is like 3 times the margin that Trump basically lost Wisconsin by, which was 20,000 votes, and that was 0.6. So it's like, it's a little iffy when it comes to these states, and usually you'll have big demographic shifts that shift the electorate really one way or another. I mean, when people say, oh, yeah, Wisconsin's going to go red, but not Michigan, but oh, Pennsylvania is, but oh, Georgia is, North Carolina is, but not Arizona or Georgia. Well, oh, yeah, Nevada's going to go red. It doesn't make sense because the white vote is a really big part of the electorate, and if it sways one way or another, usually that huge coalition goes that way. And if Trump is doing even a tiny bit better with minority voters, he wins the election. I mean, let's say he loses ground with, white voters by a point. Let's say that happens and Biden kind of expands his lead in the popular vote by a point. Let's say that's the case, right? If we look at the margins here, Biden gains in Georgia, gains in a couple places. Wisconsin's probably a little bit over a point now, looking at all of this. But what's interesting is when you play this out, what's very fascinating is if Trump literally does slightly better with Hispanics, he wins Arizona. If he does like a few points better with black voters, he wins Georgia. And if he's doing a point better with whites, he's already winning Wisconsin. And that's me barely touching any of these figures. Harris doesn't have room to fall. Same way Trump didn't really have room to fall. Like, once it was obvious that he underperformed with whites nationally compared to 2016, the race was effectively over for Trump because he underperformed with the electorate that is about 60% or more than that of the electorate by a few points. And so at that point, it was very apparent that Trump was going to end up winning, or that Trump was going to end up losing. But it's like, if Trump's really winning whites by, let's say, 16 against Harris, he already flips most of these states. If he's losing Hispanics by 10 nationwide, that already brings him up to 318, and he's already winning New Mexico. And if he's performing better with African Americans, that just solidifies a lot of the margins in Georgia. Asians, a lot of the polling data has him ahead. Even if he is winning them by 5 or losing them by 5, Trump is in Virginia. He's in play, which polling data just suggests he is. And if other voters are kind of really breaking towards Trump, this gives you this 331 electoral college victory on the map. And it's like, yeah, Rich Barris in Iowa, apparently, according to him, he sees a lot of internals and, certain numbers that have not come out yet. And Ann Seltzer, which is the best pollster in Iowa, out of any pollster you could find, talking about 1-point errors in some states in almost all races in Iowa. And she has Trump up by 19, according to Rich Barris. She literally won't release it because it's like counterproductive to all the other data. It's so off from all the other state polling data that apparently she just refuses to release Iowa, the Iowa poll, even though it does have Trump up by 19, and even though she's been dead on accurate. If Trump is really winning Iowa by 19, guys, he's not losing the election, because I expect it to vote to the right of the nation by 15 points this cycle. So if he's winning Iowa by 19, and by the way, the straw poll at the state fair in Iowa has it as like 21 points, and that thing has like a 2-point error on the presidential level. And that kind of matches with Ann Seltzer's 19-point victory. And so it's like, yeah, if has him up in Iowa by 19, and let's say it actually underestimated Trump by a point. So let's say that Trump is really up by 20, right? Let's say he wins by 20 in Iowa, and I expect it to vote 4 points to the right of the nation. That means, it would be voting 15 points to the right of the nation. If he's winning it by 20, that means Trump's up in the popular vote by 5. He's up in the popular vote anywhere in a range of probably like 0 to 5 points. He could be anywhere in that range. There's no way that he's winning Iowa by 19 and losing the popular vote. And at that point, that means Florida is probably safe, including Ohio. Texas is a hard one, but if Hispanics just really zoom to the right, Trump could even be safe there. California could be in the safe column still. DC, Maryland, Massachusetts, Vermont could also be in that safe column as well, but that's about it. Like, that's literally all you would have. I mean, Alaska would be safe. And if Trump's really doing that good with Hispanics in Florida and Texas, just the Atlanta vote alone with Hispanics would push Trump over the top by a tilt margin. But with the African-American electorate probably having lower turnout, that's going to push Georgia even further to the right, as well as North Carolina. And right now I have Georgia as like a 5.5 point win for Trump in my adjusted polling average. And I think in North Carolina, it's plus 6.8. And these were numbers that were really similar to Rich Barris and Robert Barnes. I mean, they were fairly similar numbers. I also have likely Nevada and Arizona for Trump too, because he's performing way better with Hispanics in the crosstabs. Like, there's no way he's going to improve with Hispanics by 20, but be even competitive in Arizona. Like, it just doesn't make any sense. And it doesn't make sense that Nevada votes for Trump by 5 points, but Arizona doesn't. Like, the white vote in Arizona is not going to differ that hard from Nevada by that much. I mean, yes, Arizona's going to trend to the left, but it's not going to be to the point where he's like Trump's competitive in Arizona while winning Nevada by like 8. Like, it's not going to happen. Like Oregon, Washington, you know, Colorado, a lot of these states are going to fall into the, you know, 10 to 15 range, sometimes even like single digit range. Like Colorado could be a 9-point win or so. Like Maine's first could fall under 15. Illinois could fall under 15 points. Hawaii could possibly even fall under 15. And my Rust Belt averages, I mean, I have Trump up in Wisconsin by a little bit over 5 in my adjusted moving average. And Barnes has it at plus 6 for Trump, which is already pretty crazy. And on top of that, too, Pennsylvania. I mean, if Harris is really doing that bad, like, right now, we can actually show some data for this. You know, the persistent Scott Presler, everybody should go follow him on X. You know, we clearly see here that the voter registration between active, you know, voters is shrinking by the minute. Like, they are putting in work in Pennsylvania. They are seriously putting in work, and Democrats are gaining voters, but there are counties that are seriously in jeopardy of flipping in voter registration. Like, I think they actually just talked about this, that Center County is literally just a tiny bit away. It's just a little bit away. Look, Center County, which is home to Pennsylvania State University. That's not a regular, like, that's a liberal college. I mean, it's a liberal university. And the state is the county is 1,000 voters, minus 1,000 voters away from flipping Republican. Those are crazy registration numbers. Like, and the Democrat mail-in request ballots right now are super low in Pennsylvania. Now, could those voters show up on election day? I mean, it's possible. But if you have a lot of young people making up your coalition, the problem is that a lot of them may be in class, they may be in college, and you may not be able to get out that vote the same way. And really, to be honest, the voters who would probably want to skip class to vote would probably end up voting for Trump anyway. Like, let's just be real. And so, I mean, that's a little bit anecdotal evidence, but really everything else has pointed to Trump doing far better. And Biden's margins were really inflated in northeastern and just the eastern part of Pennsylvania in general. Like, he just did way better with Irish voters in Pennsylvania. Like, it is what it is. And so it's like, with Harris being unpopular, guys, she's not at a 50% approval rating. It's not true. Like, don't let the media make you believe that she's at that approval rating. She's not. She is not there. She's just not at that approval rating. Now, Michigan, we've seen some Target Smart data. It seems like Republicans in the voter registration, like the Democrats' model data from Target Smart, looks pretty good. I do think that Cornel West is going to siphon some votes away in Michigan from Harris, and that's going to really affect her with the Palestine-Israel people and just these white working class voters and people in Detroit just kind of moving to the right. It's the same thing. I mean, Nebraska 2nd probably goes red too. Now, I think Minnesota probably holds for Harris because they have Tim Walz that could possibly do some things there. But overall, she'll probably appeal more to people in the Minneapolis area for being very, very, very far left. And New Mexico's hard because you have Albuquerque, and it's kind of the same thing. You have a lot of white liberals there. And I think it probably comes down to maybe 1 to 3 points in New Mexico. Minnesota could be like a 2 to 4 point win for Harris. I actually think she may do better than 2016 Clinton in Minnesota. I just think those Hennepin counties are going to move really far to the left. And we kind of have Virginia, New Hampshire, and Maine. I still think that these are going to stay. But I do think they may be pretty close. Like, these are going to be within a couple thousand votes. Like, I wouldn't be surprised. And Virginia is one that I'm really iffy about because you do have that Nova region that's really pushing these states. You know, it's really pushing the state to the left. But that rural turnout, the fact that Youngkin's the governor there, it's just really pushing the state to the right as a whole. He's got a 60% approval rating. So I do think that it's going to be way closer than people think. There's even polling data. The last 3 polls have the state within the margin of error, and they've been relatively close, all of them underestimating Trump in 2016 and 2020, actually, by multiple points, but they're at least within reasonable margin of error. And right now, Virginia is effectively in a category. I mean, my moving average has Virginia going tilt Democrat. New Hampshire, my moving average actually has it lean Republican. So you could even say that this is possibly even the map. Like, you could realistically say that. Even my New Mexico average is like basically tied. I mean, that state in my moving average is tilt, but I'd say for the sake of the characterizations of the states right now, I'd say this is probably where we stand. I think Trump's going to outperform in some of these swing states by an incredible amount, to the point where I think he's really going to surprise people. I think he's really going to surprise people in the Sun Belt, and I think he's going to surprise a lot of people in Wisconsin and Pennsylvania. I think he's going to really, really outperform there, to the point where the race really wouldn't even be close. Like, I mean, if he's really winning Wisconsin and Pennsylvania over 5 points, like, it's a semi-competitive election, but not really even. So that's pretty much it for this video, guys. If you guys did enjoy, make sure to hit the like button and to subscribe if you want more content just like this. And I will see you guys in tomorrow's video, which we are actually doing a collaboration with Rasmussen Reports, you know, the #1 pollster in the nation. If you add up their average of polls in 2020, they actually have Biden plus 5.2, which is exactly what our adjusted aggregate for 2020. I went and tested the same average we have now for 2024 that has Trump up by 2 points nationally. We now have tested it, and it had Biden up by 5.2%. And if you tested the 2024 polls right before Biden would have dropped out, he's down there by like almost 7 points. So he would have lost bad. Like, he would have, like, it wouldn't have even been fair. Like, he would have lost Minnesota, he would have lost New Mexico, Virginia, New Hampshire, Maine. He probably would have even lost New Jersey. Like, it would have been a disaster. Like, it would have been really, really bad. And so, guys, hit the like button, subscribe, and I will see you guys in tomorrow's video at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.